What is poppin', Broncos country, my people? I hope y'all having a wonderful Monday evening, man. And now we had a couple days to sit back, relax, digest the draft, watch other people's grades and rankings, and all that really fun stuff. And you know what, man? We're going to talk about this draft in depth. And after a lot of thought and really diving into it and thinking about, all right, let's talk about the philosophical approach. Everybody in Broncos country wanted more weapons for Bo Nix. They wanted this to be a draft where we built around Bo, we kept the young nucleus, and we get him some weapons and blah, blah, blah. Well, ultimately, we had 7 picks. Good evening, David. How are you, buddy? We had 7 picks, right? And 3 of them were offensive guys. One of them being the last pick of the draft, Caleb Lohner, who's an extremely raw prospect. We'll talk about him. The other 2 were UCF running back RJ Harvey, who we should all be thrilled about, and Illinois wide receiver Pat Bryant. And instead of talking about the kind of weapon that Pat Bryant's going to be for Bo Nix, everyone wants to just talk about how we took him too early, which I don't agree with. And then we took 3 defensive players. Now here's the thing, even in free agency, right? We made most of our free agency moves. Our biggest signings, 2 of them were defensive players, Nteleno Hufanga and Andre Greenlaw. And we did bring in Evan Ingram, which we cannot forget that he's a part of this offseason program, right? He's an offseason guy that we brought in at the biggest position of need that we had on the team that I think can be very, 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 very good in this offense. And I agree. We need more tight end depth, right? We are 1 injury away from having the worst room again. And it wasn't really addressed. What's up, Victory Lap? It wasn't addressed in the draft, which I can get. I understand it. But you guys, I need you guys to maybe take some food for thought from this, for whatever it's worth. This draft proved that the Broncos not only believe in Bo Nix, but they believe in him even more than us as fans do, and as us as fans probably believed that the Broncos did, because they believed that what he showed as a rookie, what he is going to develop into going into year two in the system, year 2 in the league, is going to be so great that the best thing that we can do, and that he's going to be able to maximize all of the weapons and players that he has at his disposal. He's not going to, the best way to help him out more than anything, more than a good run game and more than, better weapons, is a more elite defense. Because they believe that if they can even be better on defense, and the defense bailed out this team a lot last year. Let's face it, they were the reason we were able to get 10 wins. They were the biggest reason why we were able to, finally get to the playoffs and stop that streak. And so why not build on that strength and make them even better? And also know that the offense is going to be, night and day better than it was last year. And if that's the case, if that ends up coming to fruition, the Broncos are going to be a problem. Now, I think the big thing before you talk about this draft is that you got to look at it like, okay, what is your belief in where the Broncos are at currently? Like, if you think that they are entering the Super Bowl window and that they are getting to the point where they will be competing for championships starting this year, then the draft was honestly borderline perfect, because the best teams, the elite teams in the NFL, the teams that have been good for the last several years, typically always prioritize defense when they have a franchise quarterback. So if you believe Bo's a franchise quarterback, which I'm sure most of you guys do, and you believe that this team is on an upward trajectory to where their Super Bowl window is starting to open, building up on that defense is the best way to do it. Even if your defense is already really, really good. You can never have enough talent on a roster, but especially not on defense. And especially because you have a franchise quarterback in Bo Nix that can mask a lot of the flaws of some of the offensive players, A. And B, you got a coach in Sean Payton that is confident and that believes he can get the most out of his offensive guys and the guys that he has on his team. And it's another year for him too. That's what a lot of people don't understand, is obviously it's his system, but he really learned a lot about this team overall. Who's good at doing what? What's the best place to run for these guys? The best way to manage the offense, best way to, set up the shot play and all that kind of stuff that he likes to do. he's going to be better at that going into year 2 as well. And so I expect for this offense to take a really big leap forward. And just like Victory Lap says here, man, I like both Harvey and Bryant, but felt like they were overdrafted in my opinion. I mean, I can understand that. Harvey, I would say absolutely not overdrafted. I think a lot of people feel like Pat Bryant was. But my question is this: why do you feel that way? Like, why do you feel like they were overdrafted without having seen them on the field? Because I think you have to look at it like, maybe they're overdrafted on Todd McShay's board, or they're over. And he said, actually, Todd McShay's the one that said this in his draft eval. He's one of my favorite guys to follow on YouTube. He had said, sure, I might say he was overdrafted based off of my board, but where was he ranked on the Broncos board? Where was he ranked on the Eagles board and other teams? Where were they ranked? And if the Broncos had a 3rd round grade on Pat Bryant, then he wasn't overdrafted. And we'll ultimately be able to see, right? The consensus isn't always right. The consensus had Shedeur Sanders as potentially the number 3 overall pick. And some of them said there is a slight chance that he might slip out of the 1st round and get drafted in round 2. He ends up going in round 5. And yet people are not talking about, oh, he's going to be the greatest value, blah, blah, blah. These things are fluid, man. You never know how teams are thinking. And I always talk about it's team fit, right? So, for example, you can look at Caleb Johnson, someone that I always said is more of a 3rd round type of a running back, not a 1st or 2nd type of running back. But in certain schemes, he could be really good. Caleb Johnson with the Broncos, even if we took him in the 3rd round, a lot of people would have said, really good value for Caleb Johnson, because a lot of people had him consensus in the 2nd, right? But he ends up going to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 3rd, and that's going to ultimately be a really good fit for him. And I think he was drafted right where he needed to. If he went in the 2nd round and he went to a team like the Broncos, I don't care if people think it's a value pick, it's a bad fit. It always boils back down to fit. And that's exactly why it's important to understand, first of all, RJ Harvey pick, and secondly, and most importantly, the Pat Bryant pick, because Pat Bryant has traits and a skill set that is exactly not only what Sean Payton looks for in wide receivers that play a specific role, the Z wide receiver, that can play some X. He's very well rounded, and he brings a different element than any other receiver in this room has. It's kind of the issue that we had last year, right? It's the reason that Lil Jordan Humphrey played 50% of the plays last year, because he did something very specific very well, and that was blocking. And they utilized that a lot, but he wasn't really much of a threat in the passing game. And then you can talk about Troy Franklin, who's obviously still very raw, but he can only do certain things very well. And that's about it, like pretty limited in terms of what he's good at. And Devon Vele, same thing. Devon Vele is probably the closest that we had to like a complete receiver, but he still wasn't all that effective on, doing very specific types of things, right? He was really good at running specific routes, like the deep dig routes. He was good at running those. The short to intermediate slant routes, he was decent, but that's about it. And he was someone that actually won significantly more and was more productive when he was lined up in the slot, where I feel like he should be used. We don't really have, and then Marvin Mims is obviously, we know, that gadget guy. So the thing about Pat Bryant is he can bring a very unique element. He can fill the role of what Lil Jordan Humphrey filled. And regardless of what you feel about that role, it's a very, very important role in Sean Payton's offense. So that's just kind of what it boils down to. And I think that he's someone that can fill that role really well, but also be a legitimate threat in the passing game. I don't care so much about the testing numbers. He was compared a little bit from a trait standpoint to Michael Thomas, obviously the great receiver who's breaking records with Drew Brees in New Orleans. They were a very similar size and weight. And Michael Thomas ran a 4.58 and Pat Bryant ran a 4.61. And I don't think that 0.03 is going to make the biggest difference, man, when it comes to do you have the ability to separate? There's an array of examples of guys that don't test well, but that have really good football speed. And that's what Pat Bryant is. And think about it too, man. Like, I ran track for, several years in high school. I was a mid-distance runner because I wasn't fast enough to be a sprinter. But one thing I had noticed is that I felt like I was faster and I was able to get off to a better start when I started my runs standing up and just running like a normal, instead of bending down, putting your hand in the ground and going. That was always very difficult and just awkward for me. And that's the case with a lot of these athletes too, which is why I never really put too much stock into the 40 times and all that. I look way more at the 10-yard splits. I think that those are a lot more relevant because your ability to accelerate and create that separation is a lot more important. Be able to get to top speed quicker is going to be quite a bit more important. And Pat Bryant had a really good 10-yard split. He was very athletic in that sense. But you watch the tape, man, the dude separates. The guy can win. He can win pretty consistently. So let's get some of the comments here, man. Victory still on Scatterbo. Sorry, brother. Well, for what it's worth, the Broncos did invite a undrafted free agent. They invited him to come to minicamp, so they have a chance to make the team. And his name is Travis Thies. Travis Thies. Actually, let's pull him up. I'll show you guys a little bit about Travis Thies. Travis Thies played at South Dakota for the Coyotes, in case you guys cared about the Coyotes. And he was a really productive player, man. And he's kind of like the country version of Cam Scatterbo in a way. He's the ginger version of him. And this is how he looks. So here's your Cam Scatterbo. He's 5'11", 215 pounds. People are going to, and here's the funniest part. People are going to look at him and be like, man, that's a really good size running back. That's someone that's got the height and the weight of an RB1. And meanwhile, from a compact, muscular, like just build standpoint, he's quite a bit smaller than RJ Harvey, because RJ Harvey being 5'8" and 208, if he was 5'11", he'd be about 227. And I think RJ Harvey could be RB1, but that's for another day. But anyways, we did invite this guy to come. 187 yards, almost 1,200 yards, last season, 6.3 average with 19 tuds. And here's kind of the impressive part. I'm a little bit intrigued by him. 33 catches for 385 yards. Why I'm I'm going to look into him a little bit more, see if there's anything about his ability to pass protect and all that. I mean, coming from South Dakota, I don't know, but that's an interesting player because he, on paper, looks like he could be a third down back, someone that can bring a little bit of a, unique skill set in terms of catching the ball out of the backfield, being able to run between the tackles, all that kind of good stuff. But I mean, he played 6 years in college. A lot of these guys have. So I'm guessing he's a little bit of an older prospect. I don't know too much more about him besides that. So yeah. Anyways, there's your Cam Scatterbo, Vic. I got you, bro. I got you. There's your Cam Scatterbo. And the Patient 1991. Hey, shout out to my 1991 babies, man. I'm assuming that's when you were born. Salute to you on that. That's the year that I was born too. He said, I like Harvey and Bryant way more than other people do. Fans just didn't know their names, so they don't like them. Yeah, I would agree. And I also think, man, we had mock draft fatigue, right? As fans, we look through so many different mocks and we do mocks of our own. And we kind of outline, these are the running backs that I feel like fit the Denver Broncos, and you didn't see RJ Harvey on a lot of those. And so they were like disappointed. But I'll tell you guys, man, RJ Harvey is a certified stud. He is a beast. He is not somebody that by any means is small. And when people say he can't be RB1 because he's a smaller running back, guys, it's just not true. It's just not true. I mean, first of all, RB1 in this offense, what does it mean? It means that you're going to have 200, 220 carries in a season. He did that for 2 years at UCF. He's going to be able to handle that workload, no problem. But let me show you guys something I put on my Twitter too that I think is pretty insane. Oops, where's it at? Come on now. Yeah, here it is. Check homeboy out. Does that dude with them quads, that upper body, unbelievable, very proportionately built. And that's the thing. When you know big running backs versus small ones, like for example, Jaleel is like 185 pounds, right? But even if he was 200, 205 pounds, most of his weight is in his upper half. So in his arms and his chest, not much in his lower body. You like to see running backs that are built, that carry a lot of their weight lower because it helps with contact balance. It helps with obviously their strength and their power. That dude is yoked, bro. I mean, yeah, he is yoked. I ain't gonna sit there and make this a video or a live stream about like how dudes look in, tight shorts. But that is not a small running back, my guys. So I think he's going to be a stud. And the best part is he runs like he's a powerful running back. That's the coolest part. That's what I really like about him is he's a tough. And he's a tough SOB. He's hard to bring down. Bro, he's got the exact same dimensions. People are not talking about. He really has the same dimensions as Ashton Genty does. I mean, Ashton Genty weighed in about 210. According to sources, they never really came out to that, but he's about 5'8", 210. He didn't want to measure at the combine, as he shouldn't have, because some people would have looked at that and said he's small. He ain't small, dude. But RJ Harvey, Ashton Genty built very similarly, so no reason to think he can't be RB1. In my opinion, yes, a lot of people think this could have got Bryant in the 4th or the 5th. You don't know that though. You don't know that, and the Broncos weren't willing to risk that. Especially if they didn't know if they would be able to trade back again in the 4th and be able to, because they really wanted to be able to have, at least a 4th round pick. And they ended up getting Q Robinson. I think that they really tried to trade back and they didn't get any takers. So instead of being, putting yourself in that position where you're thinking, okay, is it going to be RJ? Is it going to be Pat Bryant or Q Robinson? You just say, why the hell not have both? Why not have both? They targeted 4 guys. They wanted to have 4 picks on day 2 between rounds 2 and 3. And they did just that. And they made sure that they locked up Pat Bryant. And I mean, based off of his production, based off of the way that I see him fitting into this offense, I do not believe he was a 4th or 5th round pick. I've always been pretty high on Pat Bryant and felt like the Broncos would be too, because he's just really solid. Like, there's not a lot of raw traits that you have to worry about developing like you do with Troy Franklin, right? People think Troy Franklin was a bust or he was a bad pick in the 4th. Imagine if we took him in the 2nd, like a lot of people wanted, or imagine if he went in the 7th round. It wouldn't have really made a difference, right? This is who he is. He's a developmental player. So the 4th round for someone like him makes sense. Pat Bryant's a lot more polished. He's going to come in. He's going to look like a player much earlier in his career, I think, than even Troy Franklin does. And he does a lot of different things. And yeah, you're 100% right. That's exactly what this live is about. It's showing how much confidence they have in Bo Nix. The fact that he's going to be better, and he's going to be better in Sean Payton's system, and therefore the offense as a whole is going to be better. And I think that they're really excited about what this offense can do. And guys, I mean, let's face it. We added a really good really good running back in RJ Harvey to the running back room, and I don't think we're done adding there. I think that there's going to be some veteran guys that we end up signing or trading for later on potentially. I think they were talking about they were pretty happy with their wide receiver room. They should be, and now I think it's finally well rounded out with the signing of Pat Bryant. And then they got Evan Ingram, like one of the best tight ends in the NFL when he's healthy. And someone that's a great fit. So they got better there. They got better there. Another thing is Bo Nix has the luxury of having a really good, not just a really good offensive minded head coach, but a very good offensive line. They're awesome. They're awesome, man. And I think we brought in a couple UDFAs that can really help with the depth. One of the ones I just made a really funny video on like 30 minutes ago about the Clay Webb story. It's pretty asinine, man, and it's gross. And aside from that story, I think he's got the best chance by far of all the undrafted free agents to make this team. And he could push Luke Wattenberg to be a starter if he ends up being what I believe that he can. Older prospect, but extremely dominant in the run game. Extremely. How is he going to be in pass pro? We'll see. He's a little undersized, but he's a mauler in the run game. So we've just gotten better everywhere. We don't have any depth concerns really on this team, besides maybe, tight end. I don't ever consider running back being, a depth issue. You can always find running backs that can be decent. The Broncos just elected to not do that last year. That was the problem. But you can always find guys. I mean, we signed Latavius Murray in the year that we had Hackett as a coach, and he was out there being productive and having big time games. Actually, the last running back I think that's run for 100 yards in a game was him. So yeah, Pat Bryant got incredibly good hands. He's tough as nails. And in addition to that, man, Pat Bryant is a hell of a contested catch merchant. And he's got the clutch gene, bro. 5 game-winning touchdowns, 5 of them. It's not, those kinds of things don't just happen. So, Yeah, Harvey's very underrated like Jordan James. I think he's quite a bit better running back than Jordan James. Jordan James was pretty well-rounded, doesn't do anything very special, but he was really solid. RJ Harvey has special traits. He really, really does. So hell of a player there, man. And the patient 1991, you get it, bro. You understand it. Respect to this take. Sean and George trust the tape, not the group think. They would have never drafted Bo if they listened to sports media. 1,000% true. And I mean, I've always kind of known this, but this year, what I've really learned, like when I really started, like this is the first year I really dove into like actually scouting guys and looking into players and trying to formulate like rankings and what I think about. I realized that you can have a generalized board, right? You could have a generalized board of like these are the top 10, like the top 10 running backs on my board are different than the top 10 that I would want for the Broncos, because fit and understanding like where their usage is going to be is extremely important. So obviously a lot of these guys have to have a generalized board because they're doing a consensus for 32 teams. But when you do it on a team specific basis, it changes a lot. And so that's why when you talk about Sean and George Payton's board and what they put together, it's going to look vastly different than the media consensus or the consensus guys out there, as do probably every other team's boards, depending on what it is that they're looking for. Omarion Hampton went to the Chargers. He was obviously high on their board. Reports now are that the Broncos weren't really high on Omarion Hampton, but it makes sense because Omarion Hampton fits into what Jim Harbaugh wants to do in terms of the running game in Los Angeles. He doesn't really fit Sean Payton and what he does very well. A lot of people tried to convince you that he did, but I was never the biggest Omarion Hampton fan overall. I thought he was good. I just didn't know how great he's going to be in the Broncos. But we'll see. We will see, man. So good evening, Judson. What's going on, bro? How you doing, man? I hope you're having a nice night. Yeah, RJ Harvey was Chris Sims' third ranked running back. I'm pretty sure Bo was his third quarterback last year. Yeah, and he also was MJD was super high on RJ Harvey too, man. And MJD is someone that I really respect the analysis of when it comes to running backs, because he gets it and he understands the fit. And he actually had Omarion Hampton at 7, and he had said, man, this dude RJ Harvey isn't a certified baller, like really, really good player, somebody that's really fun. So I love it. I was all there with you, bro. I knew we weren't gonna take Omarion Hampton, and it wasn't just because I hope we didn't, but it would not have been the smart value play. You're getting somebody in Jahdae Barron, bro, who's gonna be an all-pro level player, in my opinion, Swiss Army knife type of guy for many, many years. Very impactful player you're gonna get. I don't care if he ends up being technically a starter or not. He's gonna play a lot of snaps on this defense. And he's going to make a lot of plays, man. People are going to love him, and he can contribute in a lot of different areas. So, think about what Cooper DeJean did for the Eagles last year. It's big. And so, but again, going back to it, this is what teams that believe that they have a franchise quarterback do. It's not always about building around them. It's about building out a good defense. Now, obviously, if you're going to build around your quarterback, the best thing to do is build the offensive line. The Broncos have a luxury now where we don't need to worry about the offensive line because the O-line is really good. So some people came at me. They're like, well, yeah, how did that work out for C.J. Stroud in his second year when they didn't end up getting, skill position players for him? And I think to myself, if you guys think that C.J. Stroud taking a step back last year was because of lack of weapons, you were not watching. You were not watching the Texans. The Texans' run game was significantly improved last year than it was the year prior. The weapons were the same. In fact, you can make the argument that they got better in terms of the weapons that they gave. They got him Stephon Diggs. He played for a little bit of the season. But they got Stephon Diggs. Tank Dell took a big step in his second year. And the reason that they took a step back is because their defense wasn't nearly as good as it was the year prior. And their offensive line was trash. Complete trash. So what they need to do, they need to build back up the defense, but they also need to find a way to protect them first, right? CJ Stroud's actually a perfect example for my argument. You got him more weapons. You got him a better run game, but you failed to make improvements and have a better defense. And you also failed to address the O-line, and he went backwards as a result. Same kind of thing there. My thing is, if you gave Bo a really good defense in his rookie season, you need to give him an even better defense or continue to give him as good of a defense as possible because he's going to keep it rolling. And then, you know, you love the fact that we're very fortunate to have a great O-line. I love it. And I like a lot of the depth that we have at O-line too. I really do. This is a good question here. If Jahdae Barron wasn't there, then Denver was drafting a defensive tackle. Potentially. I mean, you have to also think if Jahdae Barron wasn't available at 20, that obviously would have meant that he would have went to one of the previous 19 teams. Depending on which team that was, it would have made another guy available. So as example, if the Buccaneers took Jahdae Barron and Emeka Ibuka was available, I don't think they would have traded back. I think they would have taken Ibuka there. And there's a lot of other guys, but yeah, I think they ultimately probably even tried to trade. I want to say they didn't necessarily tried to trade back, but they were certainly entertaining offers. They figured nothing was really worth it or nothing blew them away. So they went with the best player on their board, Jahdae Barron, as they should have. If he wasn't there, they stayed, and it wasn't Ibuka either. I think Walter Nolan could have been someone, not Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon is someone that they could have certainly thought about as well. So, yeah, man, I think this was a draft that really, like I said, it showed a lot of confidence in Bo Nix. It showed that they truly believe that he's a franchise quarterback. They built around him sufficiently, not just with the RJ Harvey and Pat Bryant draft picks, but also with the signing of Evan Ingram as well. And in addition to that, like I said, nothing helps a rookie quarterback out more than a defense that's baller, because then they don't have to feel like they need to force anything. So I think it's one of the big reasons why Bo Nix started off really slowly last year as well. Obviously, he was a rookie and he had no experience, so that was a big part of it. But I felt like he kept thinking he needs to go out there and make plays. He needs to score as many points as he possibly can, because he was used to that in Oregon. He was used to it being like, man, we got to outscore these teams, and he was able to do it. And when he started to realize, man, we got a really good defense here, bro, like a really good defense, I don't have to do that. He started to wean it in and then incrementally get better and better every single week. It's going to be the same kind of thing. If things go the way that I feel like the trajectory is, and obviously there's so many different factors that can play a role into this, I think the Broncos are going to be significantly better than they were last year, and not necessarily by a win standpoint. I'm not saying they're going to win 13, 14 games. They could very well win 10 games next year like they did last year, but they're going to look way better doing it. They're going to look like an even more dominant team. I think they're going to play the elite teams in the NFL a lot better. I think they're going to be able to beat better competition because I think they're just going to be balling out. I'm really excited, man. I'm really excited. Emeka would have been an exciting pick. I think you're asking yes, but do you take Pat at 74 if we took Ibuka? I'm assuming that's what you asked, and obviously the answer is no, not at all. But I think the reason the Broncos liked Ibuka is a lot of the same reasons why they liked Pat Bryant. They're very similar players in terms of their skill set. Like, they make the really tough plays, the really tough catches across the middle. They block their asses off. They can play inside and outside. I know Ibuka played significantly more in the slot, but he can play outside, whereas Pat Bryant played more outside. But they're actually very similar players. And so, no, it was definitely one or the other. Very similarly to, like, the Broncos realized they weren't going to be able to trade up and get Ashton Genty. So they got another running back that they felt had a lot of the same traits as Ashton Genty and RJ Harvey. I think they did the same thing with Pat Bryant. They didn't ultimately get Ibuka, so they got themselves Pat Bryant in third. That's kind of where I'm at. But I think that they're really similar. And what do you think about calling the defense the Orange Bang? I like the Orange Bang. I even like No Fly Zone 2.0. Because No Fly Zone was such a good name. Adding a 2.0 to it is cool. But we can start talking about nicknames once they prove it on the field a little bit more. But yeah. Are you asking that Tampa changed our draft drastically? Let's play that game. They definitely changed my opinion on the draft. I was shocked, like absolutely shocked when I saw them take Ibuka. Like, when I was worried, oh man, I hope somebody doesn't jump the Broncos to get Ibuka. And then I saw, oh, okay, Tampa Bay's pick is in. Cool. Like, that's awesome. Emeka Ibuka is going to be available. I was shocked when they took him. I ain't going to lie to you. But like, let's say they didn't take Ibuka. I don't know if it changes it that much, to be honest. Because I think what ends up happening is I still think you trade back a couple of times. I still think you take RJ Harvey regardless in the second. And then instead of Pat Bryant in the third, you probably are getting a corner that you really liked, that has similar traits to Jahdae Barron, which fortunately for us, there actually is not a lot. Like there's a pretty big drop off between the top two corners and Jahdae Barron and Will Johnson. You could say Benjamin Morrison is good too, but he had the injuries. But those are really the guys. And then you had like the Maxwell Harristons, who I think is a good player, but doesn't really fit what we're looking for. He's not a good tackler at all. And then there was a pretty steep drop off. So that was another positive thing, is like there was a lot of wide receivers, depending on the kind of wide receiver you're looking for. There was a lot of tight ends and there was a lot of running backs. So we could afford to wait on them. But by getting Jahdae Barron, we got the best corner. And then there was not a very deep corner class. There was a pretty significant drop off at that point. But I don't know if it changed it too much. I mean, obviously, I think the day 2 picks with Harvey and Savion Jones would have been pretty similar. I think just that second, third round, the first, third round pick, I think would have looked a little bit different, for sure. Oh man, what's going on? Bo Casa is here. He is at it. I don't know how you're feeling about the Chargers draft, man. I'm curious your thoughts on the Chargers draft overall. I think it's cool when you have a coach like Jim Harbaugh who runs such a unique style of offense, and he's looking for very specific and unique players. You're able to usually get them because they're not really, these guys are not necessarily highly touted guys or highly sought after guys from other teams, because you're looking at something really specific. But we can talk a little Chargers just because Bo Costa is always showing some love. Omarion Hampton, I think it was a really good pick for y'all. I'm really happy that you got him, because that means that we didn't, because I was not a big fan of him, to be honest with you, for the Broncos and in round 1. But I think it worked out for y'all. It is confusing though, because you guys signed Najee, so maybe they just really wanted to bang it out. Trey Harris is going to be really interesting, man, because he's someone that I had mixed feelings on. I think a lot of guys had mixed feelings on, but he could be really good, opposite of Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey can kind of run every single route, and he's just that Swiss Army knife type of receiver. Trey Harris can run 2 routes very well, and if he can continue to build up, he might be one of the steals. Jamari Caldwell, I love. He was one of my make my mark guys, along with Jahdae Barron. And Keandre Lambert-Smith, I think, is probably, like, I think early on, Keandre Lambert-Smith is going to be the best receiver for you out of this class. I think he's more ready to go right away, but long-term, Trey Harris can be good. Kyle Kennard, good pass rusher, I think is good. But what really pissed me off, and where I think you guys crushed it, is with the selection of Oronde Getz in the second. I was pounding the table for him, man. I really wanted Oronde Getz in the second. I heard a lot of good things about RJ Mickens too, the safety from Clemson. But I ain't gonna lie, man. I really wanted Oronde Getz in bad after we missed out on all those tight ends early. So, like I said, I give this grade a solid B. I think day 3 was definitely disappointing. It took a little, it was a little bit deflating. It took some air out of the balloon for me, because even though I felt like I knew we were going to draft a punter, I was hoping at least we would do it with the 7th round pick, and then the 6th we'd be able to really make that count. You had a guy like Kyle Monangai there for you, man, available. You had Mitchell Evans, the tight end, as someone that, was available. Even Jackson Hawes, the tight end from Georgia Tech. I was like, I like the traits and the potential there. And I just like the fact that he plays tight end. Instead, you get a punter, and then you get a tight end that has played 57 snaps in college, not games, snaps. And Caleb Lohner just learned how to put on football pants this last 6 months, maybe 7 months. That's crazy, bro. So he's going to be a fascinating story to follow, but I think there's a better chance he quits football than there is of him making the team. So that's just me being real. Yeah. That's the thing about RJ too, man. Like his stats stand out. 22 touchdowns this past season, 19 last year. But then you turn on the film and you're like, holy shit. Like you look at Caleb Williams' stats and you're like, damn, they're impressive, right? They're in line with RJ Harvey. I think they're actually almost the same, if memory serves. But then you watch the two running backs and you're like, dude, give me a break, bro. Like RJ Harvey is way more dynamic, way more. It's actually pretty ridiculous. So I love it. Anyways, I'll make this one a short one, y'all. I'm gonna go upstairs, have some food, and get ready to watch the Avs play tonight. But I appreciate all you guys in the chat, man. Judson Cake, Aaron Taylor, Bolt Casa, my guy. Guys, go check out his channel. Right, I know he's a Chargers fan. He's on enemy lines, but he puts out good content, man. And it's always good to know what the teams in your division are doing and how their fan base is feeling. And we always got room for you here, bro. Always. Victory lap. All y'all, man. I appreciate the love. You guys, Aaron, you guys, Eli Betts, you guys all, the patient 1991. Shout out to my 91 man. Appreciate all you guys. Have a wonderful evening, man. And we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.